This week's episode of our show has been sponsored by Stibble's Codex of Companions, which is now available to order.
Stibble's Codex of Companions is a 5th edition supplement that is filled with cute and crazy critters to bring to your D&D games.
Not only is it filled with adorable companions and rules that you can use in your games, but it's also been created by our great friend Logan at RuneSmith, coming off the back of their super successful Kickstarter, but is now available widely for anybody in both print and PDF.
So if you want to add some colorful companions into your games, make sure to follow the links below to grab your copy of Stibble's Codex of Companions today.
And now, let's get on to this week's topic. Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D, including advice for players and guides for DMs.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
This is part 2 of our subclass tier ranking for the Barbarian in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In our previous episode, we looked at the Barbarian subclasses in the Player's Handbook and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And this time around, we're taking a look at the 2 new ones introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
If you look on the screen right now, you're going to see the criteria that we use to rank the subclasses. We have pitted the subclasses against each other and not those of other classes. Keep in mind that although we may mention the flavor or role-playing potential as well as multi-classing, these are not core mechanics that we use to judge the subclasses.
And of course, when we do evaluate subclasses, we look at how they augment the base class in all pillars of play. Now, the Barbarian is a very combat-oriented class, and of course, looking at how these features augment the Barbarian's ability to deal damage, survive in battle, and contribute in interesting ways to combat will be a primary metric. But we also do want to look at and see, do these subclasses offer the Barbarian anything else? Because of all classes, I think, like the Fighter, the Barbarian is one of those classes where you want to hope that you get something that helps you outside combat so you can contribute to exploration scenarios and maybe, if you're lucky, social interaction.
So let's take a look at these 2 new subclasses. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
So first up is the Path of the Beast. This Barbarian, through their rage, channels their inner animal. Kind of like I don't know, I immediately look at this as like a Wolverine-like character.
Absolutely.
But of course, you can have relationships with like being a werewolf or a druid or your inner spirit animal. I think that there's a potential to run this with a very similar lore to the Path of the Totem as well. And I think it really doubles down into that animalistic rage, quite literally. The first feature you're going to get is the Form of the Beast. This is an augmentation to your rage that allows you to choose either having a bestial muzzle, claws, or a tail that grows out of you when you enter into your rage that lasts for the duration of the rage.
No matter which option you choose, they become natural weapons that you can attack with using your strength. And each of these features has its own little benefit. When you choose the Bite, you now deal 1d8 damage, and once per turn you can gain a number of hit points back equal to your proficiency modifier, provided you have less than half your hit points when you hit. With the claws, it's pretty simple. You deal 1d6 damage, and you have to have your hands free, but when you make an attack, you can attack with the other claw as part of that action. With the tail, you use 1d8 for your damage die, and when you are attacked, you can use your reaction to add 1d8 to your AC.
At level 6, you gain a Bestial Soul. This is a feature that you have all the time, and you can change it during a short or a long rest. It either gives you a climb speed equal to your walking speed that allows you to climb on ceilings and along walls, or you can have a swimming speed and the ability to breathe underwater, or finally you get a big augmentation to your ability to jump, basically making a athletics check and adding the check result to how far you jump.
And now on top of this, your natural weapons are magical for any instances where it comes up that there are resistances in play.
At level 10, you gain Infectious Fury. When you hit a creature with one of your natural weapon attacks while you're raging, you can try to infect them. You can do this a number of times per day equal to your proficiency modifier. And when you hit the target, they get to make a wisdom saving throw. The saving throw DC determined by your proficiency bonus plus your con plus 8. Then you get to choose the effect that happens.
You can either force the target to use its reaction to make a melee attack against another target next to it, Or, if there's nobody next to it, you can force the target to take an additional 2d12 damage. At 14th level, you gain Call of the Hunt. Now, when you enter your rage, you can use the Call of the Hunt to muster up the troops around you. You can choose a number of willing targets equal to your Constitution modifier. When you do, you gain 5 temporary hit points for each creature who is willing to give in to the Call of the Hunt. And they all get to deal an additional 1d6 damage when they hit with an attack roll once per turn. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency modifier. So let's get into it.
Here is the cool thing about this class. You are your weapons. It's kind of like this weird Wolverine monkey sort of thing. And I think on paper, these claws look pretty impressive. Because right away, you got 2 claws. You get to make an extra attack. They're going to get the benefits of your strength modifier. And so at 5th level, when you normally get extra attack, you get to make 3 attacks with these claws, all of which benefit from your strength modifier, all of which benefit from your rage bonus damage. The biggest issue here, though, is that the claws aren't light weapons. So you can't use them with 2-weapon fighting unless you take the dual wielder feat. And even then, it's a little dubious how it works altogether. That was my initial thought when I looked at this. Was like, so the claws are 2 claws. Does that mean I'm automatically dual wielding and I get to attack with my bonus action? Worse, the Barbarian doesn't get fighting styles, so they don't get any of the 2-weapon fighting kind of augmentations that would normally come with this unless they multi-class. Still, it's pretty impressive damage, but I think it's going to get outstripped by most manufactured weapons.
This is the hard part, is that I think at early levels it might be a lot of fun to be beating people with your claws or biting them or using your tail. But as you gain more levels, and more importantly, as your DM rewards you with a magical great axe, suddenly using the natural weapons become less and less likely. You're basically committing to never exploring the ideas of magic weapons or better weapons out there.
Yeah.
If you are playing in a game that uses feats, the idea of using Great Weapon Master and a 2-handed axe is going to beat this every time.
I think it will. You'll fall behind in the overall damage race compared to Great Weapon Master for sure. Although at low levels of play or in a campaign that you don't have feats, I think the damage is still pretty impressive. Yes. And I think that there's an interesting alternate build that you could do here where you could take the kind of like maybe even go for Tavern Brawler and Grappler and do some sort of really interesting like grab people, hold on to them and kind of tear them apart sort of thing. So if you don't want to do the whole standard Barbarian with a great axe thing and you want to have an alternate feeling here, I think that there's a cool potential here for more of a grappler wrestler style Barbarian. It's not going to do as much damage, but it might lend some interesting battlefield control that is worth exploring. The only problem here with the Grappler and Tavern Brawler for this combo is that these claws are not unarmed strikes. They are simple melee weapons. They're natural weapons. They're never referred to as an unarmed strike.
So does it even work with that build? It
doesn't work with Tavern. Tavern Brawler's coolest feature is that it lets you grab somebody as a bonus action after you make an attack with an unarmed strike. And then Grappler kind of reinforces all of that. You would have to ask your Dungeon Master to allow this to be counted as an unarmed strike for it to work. Because by the rules presented here, it is not an unarmed strike. I think the tail is a cool defensive feature. The only problem with the tail is that it uses your reaction and you're likely going to be attacking recklessly to gain advantage. So it's really kind of just compensating for the reckless attack. I think the bite is a pathetic amount of healing. I thought the bite was like damage dealt. Like if the bite healed you for the damage dealt, it would be sweet, but it doesn't. It's your proficiency mod.
It's not only your proficiency mod, but you have to be under half health. So this really doesn't come into play until you've already suffered.
Yeah, and once you're at half health, this is a meager amount of healing.
It's not going to save you. It's going to be one hit that you might save yourself.
So I think the question really here is maybe there's some creative alternative playstyles that you could explore with this. They're not going to have the kind of foe slaying fury that you get out of like your Great Weapon Master Zealot. And I don't think that you're going to be able to be anywhere near as tanky as a Totem Warrior Barbarian. But if you're sick of those things, this will be fine. It's just, I don't think it's as good as those things as far as raw combat potential goes.
I do like that we gain the climbing speed or the swimming speed. I could literally throw the jump option out and not care. But a climbing speed where you can actually go on the ceiling is incredibly useful for now. You can be useful for exploration and utility. Having the boots of spider climbing in our recent campaign, I can tell you for a fact that being able to be on the ceiling or climb up walls easily is really helpful. Swim speed in the right moment in a campaign, if you come to a water area, having a swim speed and being able to breathe underwater is going to be really important. This is probably my favorite ability that this barbarian gains.
I think it's pretty cool. It's fun and useful. Again, I just think of the, not to compare it to outside classes, but a bunch of subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything got flying speeds at level 6. And the Totem Barbarian does get a fly speed, but not until a much higher level. So this is good stuff. I think it adds a lot of mobility to the Barbarian. I think that the climbing speed is really good because it's useful in combat. And the jump might even be useful in some combat scenarios as well. So don't sell short the jump.
Okay.
I think it's fine. The Infectious Fury is basically getting the ability to smite a number of times per day equal to your proficiency modifier. But the target gets to make a saving throw against it.
That's always tough.
Yeah. And the thing is that with Infectious Fury and Call of the Hunt, both of these are going to be based on your Barbarian's Constitution modifier. You're going to have a good con, but it's probably going to be 16, and then maybe you might boost that up at higher levels of play if you don't take any feats. So you can use this 3 times per day probably when you get it, because I don't think you're going to pump your con over your strength for this character.
Yeah, there is a play here where you're literally just a big meat shield and you boost your con, but I think most people like to put their most into strength. I think that these higher level abilities are really neat. But at the end of the day, is this a unique playstyle for Barbarian? Yes. If you really want to be Wolverine, then you have your ticket to do so. But I don't think this is the optimal Barbarian. It falls behind in damage. It falls behind in tankiness. Those are the 2 things we want our Barbarian to do the most. Deal out damage and be tanky.
Yeah.
And if you're not helping on either of those, if you're falling behind because of this subclass, is this a B or is it a C?
The natural weapons that you get when you're raging here are not measurably better than using a weapon. And that seems like a big problem. Like, I think that this form of the beast, I want the claws, and the claws don't scale. Like, they're as good right away when you get them as they are at higher levels. So you don't really, like, if there was even something here like the Infectious Fury just added an extra d6 necrotic damage on all your claw attacks, or something that made this more impressive as you gained levels. Again, it's good at low levels, but I think it really just drops off. And the fact that there's no, I don't know. This is not strong to me.
No, it's a compelling concept, but we're not ranking flavor here. Flavor's fun. This is a fun idea. But I actually don't think it delivers what we want it to deliver. If I wanted to imagine a bestial barbarian, I want them to be ravaging and destroying their enemies. I want them to be one of the best damage-dealing barbarians out there. And it's not.
Is it, okay, looking at the lower ranked subclasses, is it about on par with the Storm Herald, or are we looking at like Battle Rager or even Berserker territory here?
I want to say that this is nicer than the Battle Rager, but not much.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit better than the Battle Rager. I feel that it's kind of got some cute things in the way that the Storm Herald does as well. Like, it gives you a theme in an interesting way. I could see giving this one a B, but it's a low B, and I don't know what campaign it's S tier in.
It's S tier in a campaign where there's no feats.
Okay. And
you're playing low level?
Yeah, I guess so.
Like a 1 to 8?
I think it's really strong at level 3. It's probably at its very strongest from level 3 to 6.
Cool. So a low-level campaign where there's no feats allowed, you are going to be good. In other cases, are you going to be bad? No. But if you're in a party and you're this barbarian and then there's a totem and a zealot barbarian, you'll be sad.
I think that the case where it holds on to the B ranking, I'm really interested in this grappler tavern brawler sort of thing. I think that by taking those feats and kind of going for more of the control wrestler sort of route with it, I think you might have something there.
Yeah, I'm willing to give this a B. I think that there's much stronger options, but this is a compelling concept. As we move on to the Path of the Wild Magic, this is a really fun addition for the Barbarian where the magical energies flow through them in unexpected ways. Monty and I are well known for enjoying the way that wild magic works. Let's see if the Wild Magic Barbarian holds up.
Well, at third level, you do gain the ability to sense magic, including possibly at School of Magic, without needing to be proficient in the Arcana skill. So that's kind of fun.
Also, at third level, you're going to gain your Wild Magic table. Every time that you go into a rage, you roll on this D8 table to determine what ability you get. These abilities range from some really cool options like teleporting or gaining temporary hit points and dealing necrotic damage to some other interesting options that deal a little bit of damage.
I quite like the Exploding Fairy, or being able to shoot rays of blinding light out of your chest. All of these effects, unlike the Sorcerer's Wild Magic table, there is nothing here that is destructively negative. You're not going to fireball yourself when you start your rage. You're not going to turn into a potted plant. You're not going to summon a bunch of flumps. There's nothing here that is going to cause you to lose control of your character or negatively impact your party. In this respect, it's a very conservative wild magic table. And if you were hoping for that kind of combination of fun, cool things that are random and chaotic and have the really high highs of the Sorcerer's Wild Magic table and the really low lows of the Sorcerer's Wild Magic table, you're going to actually be disappointed by this one.
I will say, though, that for those people who don't like the Wild Magic Sorcerer because of the high highs and low lows, with this table you are sticking pretty much in the middle on all accounts.
Everything here is a benefit. All of the effects are cool. They start when you enter your rage. Some of them, they just happen when you enter your rage. And some of them give you an ability that you can use throughout your rage as a bonus action, such as the aforementioned teleportation, which is amazing, or the blinding bolt that you can fire as a bonus action on subsequent turns. It's just that you don't get to choose.
At 6th level, you gain Bolstering Magic. This ability you use as an action, and you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency modifier. You touch a willing creature. This creature can be yourself, and you imbue it with one of two options. For the next 10 minutes, it can now add a D3 to an ability check or an attack roll. Or you can add a spell slot back to a spellcaster. You roll a d3 and it can gain a spell slot of the level rolled or lower, their choice.
So your Barbarian is a walking battery. For the spell, I mean, the spellcasters in your party are going to love you. Being able to get even a second or third level spell slot back is great. That is a benefit that extends to the rest of your party, and that's a pretty rare attribute, actually.
You know who this is going to be incredibly useful for? Warlocks at early levels.
You know actually who really like this ability as well? Paladins and Rangers and other subclasses that don't get the very high level spell slots. Because for a Paladin, getting a third level spell slot back is a big deal. Or even a first level spell slot, that's another smite. So whereas a Wizard at higher levels of play, not too impactful. I mean, you get this ability at 6th level, when you can use it 3 times per day, and you can potentially give back third level spell slots, which is the highest level spell slot that can be cast. Again, when this ability comes online, it's amazing. I think that the bless effect of it as well is great. It just doesn't apply to saving throws.
At 10th level, you gain Unstable Backlash. Now, when you receive damage on your turn, you can use your reaction to roll on the Wild Magic table again. This effect happens immediately, and you shift to that roll on the Wild Magic table. So if you rolled on the Wild Magic table and didn't like what you got, and it's not working for you in that combat, you can now use a reaction to switch it up.
actually pretty useful considering that the Barbarian will be taking hits. This is a great way to get more wild magic happening more often and get into a better effect. It gets even better at 14th level when you get Controlled Surge. This feature allows you to roll twice and choose which effect you want when you roll on the wild magic table. And if you roll a double, you get to actually choose any effect you want from the entire list. So I think that the 10th and 14th level features actually combine really, really nicely to help ensure you're getting the effect that you want to get. The only problem is by 10th and 14th level, a lot of these effects are kind of weak.
This is the problem. As we get into this, I think that my major detriment for this subclass is that none of the wild magic options scale. When you're doing 1d6 extra damage at low levels, yeah, that's kind of neat. When you're level 14 doing an extra 1d6 damage, who cares?
The damage dealing features here are pathetic.
I would almost always fish for the teleportation.
Yeah, and that's because it's great at all levels of play. And there's even combat encounters where the teleportation isn't that useful. And unfortunately, the teleportation is hard to use outside of combat because you have to be raging, which means that you have to be fulfilling the requirements of your rage. Otherwise, your rage ends. And those requirements are you have to either be up to a creature or attacking or taking damage. So you can't even use this teleportation effectively outside of combat because it's dependent on your rage and you have to roll for it. So like the time that you need to teleport around, you're outside of combat, you're not going to be able to rely on this at all.
Basically, all of this Barbarian's features, aside from one, are tied to its use of rage.
Yeah.
And what magical effect you're going to bring online during that. Which means that this Barbarian gains nothing for exploration, nothing for social encounters, and a non-scaling combat bonus.
And I just have to say, I think this is a really boring wild magic table. I don't like unlike there's an argument to be going, oh, it's so fun and random. It's 8 things, and most of them are amount to an extra d6 points of damage. It doesn't have any of the character or the flavor or the risk of the Sorcerer's Wild Magic table. It is totally defanged. And so I don't even think we can make the argument that this is a fun Wild Magic Surge table because it doesn't do anything. Like, it's just a table of random buffs.
And they range from pretty awesome to not that great at all.
Yeah.
There's nothing mind-blowing. Honestly, again, the teleportation is my favorite thing on here. And then it quickly drops after that.
Yeah, and you will never be able to, with reliability, get the effect that is the most impactful at that moment. You'll be able to gamble at higher levels by taking damage and rolling twice to maybe get the effect that you want, but you'll never be able to fully count on it.
As much as I love wild magic, and I love the idea of a wild magic barbarian, and I do think that this could be a really fun subclass to see at the table, I think it's a C.
I agree. It's almost like not having a subclass in some respects.
If you roll the ability that you don't need in that moment, you don't have a subclass.
Yeah.
Other than being a walking battery and giving extra spell slots to some party members, you might be useless sometimes.
Yeah, and like the spellcasters in your party are going to come at you with the straws to drink all the magic out of you. And that's great. Like, that adds a lot to the group. But I don't want to be a battery.
Yeah, if you roll
I want to be a barbarian.
Yeah. I don't want to be a battery, I want to be a barbarian. No, 100%. If you're just, there's a chance that you're just walking around being like, who needs a charge up? Who needs a fill up on a 3rd level spell slot? Actually, I'm not that. Oh, I rolled a 1. You get a 1st level spell slot this time. Thanks for coming by. Hey, I can shoot a laser out of my chest. Do you want to see it? No? Okay.
Yeah, it only deals d6 damage.
Oops. We're at level 14. Shoot it with your chest beam, Steve. Like, I don't know.
And again, the saving throw bonus is based on your constitution, which is going to be a good score, but not necessarily your highest score. All the effects, because they're all based on saving throws, like, they could happen and
do nothing.
Do nothing. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like this subclass would have been amazing with a really cool wild magic table that actually was a 50 item massive table with cool and random stuff, and that triggered on a few more things. Like, I feel like one of the things that this thing is missing is, like, why doesn't the wild magic surge trigger on a crit? Why doesn't it trigger on a natural one? Why do, like, there's so many cases. Like, I like that it triggers when you get hit, but there's so many circumstances under which it could have gone off, and there could have been more things, and it could have been just a cooler class. But I actually think that this is one of those subclasses that says it's something with its name, and there's only 8 things on this table. Like, after 2 or 3 game sessions, you're going to have seen everything, and nothing here is going to surprise you. It's not like the Wild Magic Surge table, where with 50 things on it, it really takes a lot of game sessions before you actually see everything that it does.
Nobody at the table is going to be chanting potted plant, and that's a sad thing.
Yeah.
But
it is. It is. And like, the biggest argument that I saw looking through the comments was that this was a fun and random subclass. And I disagree. I don't think any of the options on here are particularly fun and creative.
An interesting point that I want to make here is I actually would be more excited if there were both options that were too powerful and options that were less powerful. Like, give me one that is give me a few that are a slight detriment, but still somewhat useful. And then give me a few that are, oh my gosh, I rolled this option, and now I get to use my reaction to throw a fireball every turn or something. Yeah. Like, give me something ridiculous that maybe that's a bad example, but give me some ridiculous stuff on here that when I do roll those exciting options, the table cheers. And when I roll the one that just makes a bunch of rats appear and run away, then we're all like, ah, shucks.
Yeah, exactly. There is nothing on this table that is going to cause the level of excitement. And it's hard. Maybe it's not fair that we're comparing it to the Wild Magic Sorcerer, but it feels like a natural comparison because they're both Wild Magic tables. And this subclass could have had an exciting Wild Magic table.
I think it would have even benefited even if the table had just advertised that these options scale. If they got better as you leveled up, we would have had a better subclass, but it didn't.
No, I think it should have been at least 20 things.
Well, let's take a look at what our community thought of these two subclasses.
So 11.5% of our community gave the Path of the Beast an S tier ranking, and 38.2% gave it an A tier ranking, and 38% gave it a B, and 10.9% gave it a C, with just a sliver for the D tier ranking. I think that this is a cool subclass, and it's one that I can see the excitement behind it. I just don't see the power here.
I think that I'm comfortable with the B rank that we gave it. It's nice to see that there are people out there who really want to give this an A, and I'd love to hear some of the great builds that you have that are really strong on the battlefield.
Yeah, I would too. Like, again, we talked a little bit about, this Tavern Brawler grappler thing, and does it work or does it not? How are you building your characters? What kind of things are you envisioning? And how do they stack up against the other tanky damage dealer barbarians, especially the totem? Because I think when you compare the totem and the beast side by side, it is not a favorable comparison.
Even the zealot, I think, can dish out better damage, but I'd love to hear it. When we look at the Path of Wild Magic, we're looking at a 13.3% for S tier, with 38.4% giving it A tier, 40% giving it B, 4.9% for C, and a little bit here for D. Interesting that this lands in a B with a strong contender for A, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, are we missing something with these subclasses?
I don't know. I think in terms of the grand scheme of all the Barbarian subclasses, these two are not doing any major favors. From Tasha's, we've seen a lot of implementations of subclasses that have raised the bar.
Yeah.
And I think the Barbarians, not that they needed the bar raised on them, but I feel like they got no help. And I would have liked to see a little bit more. And I'm surprised at the rankings.
Yeah, with so many of the other classes, we saw the best subclasses in the game coming out in Tasha's Cauldron and everything. But I think that the Zealot and the Totem Barbarian are still soundly on top. And I think that these two subclasses kind of fall in that middle of the pack with the Storm Herald. I don't think that either are as good as the Ancestral Guardian.
No.
Yeah, again though, I would be interested to see what we're missing. For those of you that did give these subclasses an A or S tier ranking, I would love to know about the character builds that you've been exploring with them, your experiences with them at the table, what feats or weapons you're using. Because of course with the Wild Magic Barbarian, there's nothing requiring you to use any weapon. You can still be a great weapon wielding barbarian and you get those fun and random effects. So they are piling on, and so I guess there is a case that, like, sometimes with the totem barbarian, if you're a bear totem and you're not having elemental damage being thrown at you, the bear totem isn't doing anything. But it's still too good in my mind.
I feel like the bear totem barbarian is one of the most tanky things that you can bring to the table in the whole game of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And neither of these feel like they're adding to the tankiness, the strength. They add meager damage, both of them. And they both have some fun and quirky options, and I think actually the Beast comes out on top for fun and quirky options that excel at the table. The Wild Magic, the randomness doesn't feel like you have as much to gain or lose, which some people might enjoy.
Yeah.
But I think that the cost of having some great gains and some potential losses is more fun at the table and more rewarding.
I think maybe the other thing about the Wild Magic Barbarian that really does make it seem powerful is that 6th level feature that is the Bless effect for a party member, concentration free, is pretty potent, and being able to give back spell slots to your party members is really, really good. And so I could see bumping it up in that respect, but again, it comes back to that I don't want to be a battery as a barbarian.
No,
right?
I want to be a battering ram, not a battery.
Yeah, and so I would also say with that is it's pretty low. Like, it's good, but it's not great, right? Like it's a good feature. It's there's nothing bad about it, but it just is a weird one to have in the rest of this class.
I think so far we've seen the best that the Barbarian has to offer previously, and both of these fall safely in the middle of the range of Barbarian options out there.
Both of these subclasses will produce a competent character that probably, if you lean into the archetype and you roleplay it really, really well, you're going to have a lot of fun with this character, but I don't think that either are capable of the raw power of the top tier Barbarian subclasses.
So this has been part 2 of our tier ranking for Barbarians in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Please tell us about the builds that you've made with these Barbarian subclasses in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube and want to help us out, please consider becoming a patron of our show by following the links in the description below.
Don't forget to check out our live play Shadows of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got plenty more subclass tier rankings for all the classes in D&D 5e right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.